bit over there. So thank you so much for coming out today and spending your afternoon to listen to our amazing Congresswoman Suzan DelBene. So just a couple of things. You probably saw the restrooms as you came in. I want to give you a little bit about, the format, what you're in for. This town hall will last 90 minutes, and we're wanting to be very respectful of your time, so we're going to try and end. We started 3 minutes late, so maybe we'll stop 3 minutes after 4:30, but we are very committed to stopping on time. So when it comes time for the questions, some of Congresswoman DelBene's staff will go up and down the aisles and get your questions. We want you to use the microphone, and we want you, if at all possible, to keep those questions to like 1 minute. So instead of like a long wind up to the question, we can get really quickly to the question, and everybody else can have a turn. And for those of you, there's so many of you, it's such a great thing to see. For those of you who aren't able to ask your questions, there are cards that you can fill out. Put your email on it, and the Congresswoman's office will answer those questions. So let's see. Also, I saw a bunch of folks come in with signs. So you have all taken, those of you who have signs, you've taken a lot of time to make those. So here's a good idea, because we want to be really respectful of everyone. We're going to ask you to wave those around for about 5 seconds right now, and then we want you to put them down. So everybody can still see your signs. All right. We have some people with some really nice penmanship here. So thank you for being respectful to your neighbors and keeping those signs down while we are taking questions. Let me make sure there's nothing else. Okay, and I thought the Congresswoman likes to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if those of you who are able and willing, if you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I like that. Clapping for the pledge. I would like to just introduce, and if they're here, they're going to stand up and wave. We're going to give them a big round of applause. We have some other elected officials here, and please allow me to introduce them. From our King County Council, Councilmember Claudia Balducci. Are you here yet, Claudia? Mayor of Duval, Mayor Will Ivershoff. Will? Carnation, Deputy Mayor Dustin Green. Are you here, Dustin? Yes. Mayor of Kenmore, Mayor David Baker. Mayor of Medina, Mayor Alex Moorcock. And so a couple more. Redmond's newest city council member, Tanika Hadiye. Also from the Redmond City Council, Councilwoman Angela Burney. President of the Redmond City Council, Councilmember Hank Margison. Councilmember from the city of Woodinville, Councilmember Paula Waters, sorry. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you here. So, you know what, I want to introduce our amazing Congresswoman. And if it was left up to me, I would say all 10 pages of this. I'm not going to do that. But I could. So, as you know, Suzan has been in Washington, D.C., working for us for almost 6.5 years. And she has had quite an impact in Congress, even in kind of some tough times. She has represented the 1st District and is a leader on issues of technology, health, and agriculture. She currently serves on the House Ways and Means Committee, and so she's right there at the front of the debate on taxes and health care and retirement security. In addition, she serves on the House Budget Committee, where she's working towards trying very hard to work for a bipartisan long-term budget solution. So she has a history in biotechnology. She has an MBA from the University of Washington, go Dogs. And she has more than 2 decades as an executive and entrepreneur. She's been a the CEO and president of a couple of companies. And before she went to Congress, she was also the director of Washington State's Department of Revenue. So it is my pleasure and complete honor to introduce, and we're going to give a big round of applause, right? All right.
Who is amazing. Thank you, Joan. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we have room. We weren't even sure if we were going to have to open the other bleachers, so I'm sure that was a lot harder than it would have taken a ton of time. So I'm glad we all fit. But thanks for taking the time out of your day. Especially even, I think, as the Zags are starting to play right now, which we didn't know, so I apologize for ahead of time. We didn't know we were going to end up doing this at the same time. I was in this room back here, which is the coach's office right beforehand, and as some of you know, I used to be a high school football referee, and even did a game out here, and so it looks like the coach's room in there with a lazy boy chair and a few things in there, and so I brought back a lot of memories from a long time ago when I was doing high school games. But thank you for being here. I want to give you some logistics first. We have my staff who are here, and I want to point them out, and they're going to help us get microphones so people ask questions. And I have a great team out here who I'm really proud of, who work really hard. I have 2 offices, one in Bothell, some of you have been to, and one up north in Mount Vernon for Skagit and Whatcom County. But a lot of my team is here today to help out. First, my district director, Molly, who's over there. Ben Studley, who does all of our veterans outreach, is our Wounded Warrior Fellow in my office and has done a great job working with veterans. Casework in our office, helping people directly who need help working with the federal government. And Ben is doing all of that for our veterans. And I just want to acknowledge John, who's here with us today, who has served our country and had trouble with his disability rating and getting the benefits that he's deserved. And I know Ben has had the honor of being able to work with John and help him. Thank you, John, for being here today. Thank you, Ben, for that. We also have Patrick, who's here, and Patrick does a lot of work on immigration, casework on immigration, besides being besides doing acting too, so you might see him in a local play somewhere. Patrick has helped out so much, so many folks who are struggling with immigration system that's very challenging, but also has helped some of our families in our region with their adoptions. A couple of families who wanted me to share their story, at least highlight to them how important this has been. We have two couples, Rachel and Aaron from Duval, and Austin and Aaron from Redmond, who were both couples trying to adopt children internationally, one from the Philippines and the other from Ethiopia. And Patrick was incredibly helpful. We have some nice notes in our office because of folks like Patrick being able to help people work with embassies and get through a system that has been very challenging sometimes. And now we have 4 children, in one case, Mayor Baker. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Baker from Kenmore. We have 4 children from the Philippines and a child from Ethiopia who are now happy and healthy at home thanks to a lot of great work. So thank you for that, Patrick. Rachel, who does all of our work on Social Security and Medicare. And Kelly, who does all my outreach for King and Snohomish County. And Jared, who runs our office and tells me where I'm going and where I'm going to be all the time. So you'll probably talk to her for setting up meetings. But we're going to have folks with mics from my staff who are going to help as you raise your hand. They're going to find whoever has the next question and give you and walk up to you the microphone. So I just want you to know who they are, Ben and Patrick and Rachel, and they're going to do their best to kind of make sure we get to everyone as quickly as we can. This is a very divisive time. I don't have to tell you that. And it's a challenging time in Washington, D.C. I always call this the better Washington. I don't just say that because it's true. It's definitely much more true now. We live in a challenging time. Folks aren't talking to each other, and I just want to thank you for being engaged, involved citizens, because that's going to make a huge difference as we all want to get back to a place where we see governance work again in the other Washington. So without further ado, let me start opening it up. And as Joan mentioned before, we'll have cards if we don't get to everyone, or if there's more detail and follow-up. I might ask you to talk to someone so we can get you more information afterwards if there's more depth on an issue. And we have the table right over, well, Jared's right over there. We also have a table right outside where somebody signed in, so we can help make sure we get that information. And without further ado, whoever's got, or people raise their hand if you have a question. And I think Rachel, you look like you're closest, so. I think you're going to see, probably our staff is going to do their best to try to hold the mic for you, just so that they make sure that we don't lose any of our mics around. So go ahead.
We hear a lot about the divisiveness in...
Can you just tell me your name and where you're from first?
I'm Molly Shore from Redmond, Washington. And we're hearing a lot about the divisiveness in Congress and in the White House. And I'd like to know how much bipartisan legislation and cooperation is actually happening behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a challenging time. It's been a challenging time since I've been in office, since 2012, but it's a particularly challenging time now. And I think if we're going to get things done, we absolutely need to talk to each other and listen to each other. And I feel incredibly lucky that I represent a swing district. Our district was set up to be the most evenly divided district in the country, according to our former senator, Slade Gordon. And so I'm pretty sure if we go anywhere in our district, I'll hear every point of view possible represented. And whether you agree or disagree, hearing that feedback makes us come up with better ideas and solutions to solve problems and understand maybe a little bit more about what our neighbors are going through. So I am never surprised when I'm in DC and I hear differing points of view or ideas, and I really cherish being able to have those conversations, and I've worked hard to try to find bipartisan solutions. We did that on the Farm Bill. In my first term in Congress, we were able to pass a Farm Bill to bipartisan support. Have worked hard on immigration reform and tried to build bipartisan support there. A lot of issues of technology to work with others to pass laws on things like privacy, where we've had strong bipartisan support, sometimes strange bedfellows. And I say that, I want to highlight that there are many, you can always find somewhere something that you might be able to work with someone on, even if you disagree on so many other things. And so it doesn't mean that you have to work with someone because you agree on everything. You can find places where we have paths to work together. For example, a bill that I've been working on to help in our rural communities, our timber towns, was a bill I introduced called the Timber Innovation Act, and worked with Kathy McMorris Rogers on that. We passed the Alpine Lakes Wilderness bill finally. And had the opportunity to work with Congressman Reichert on that. So there is bipartisan effort. I guess the last thing I'd say is the challenge we have is that even when we work together, sometimes those bills never get a chance on the floor. They never move forward. And so it's not just that we need people to work together. We also need leaders to allow bipartisan legislation to move and allow us the chance to vote on that legislation.
So I'm Carl Gaddis, unincorporated King County, and it's a specific question, but first I want to thank you so much for your dedication to listening to your constituents and your hard work in Washington. So, House Joint Resolution 48 has similar language to Initiative 735, which passed in our district with a 60% margin. I'd like for you to talk about your position on that, and I note that you have not yet signed on as a sponsor for that legislation. So I'd like to hear about that.
No, thank you. And I absolutely support overturning Citizens United. And I've signed on to legislation or a constitutional amendment to do that. There are other pieces of legislation that have come forth, that being one. And so we are looking at that. I saw the flyer that was being handed out beforehand, so I could look. My staff is looking at that piece of legislation, so I agree with the concept. I just need to look at that one specifically. Clearly, passing any legislation to overturning a constitutional or creating a constitutional amendment is hard, and especially in this Congress where we struggle to do some things we can agree on. Mm-hmm. So there are other things I think are important, like the Disclose Act, which is a piece of legislation I also supported. It's been out in previous Congresses. All it says is that we should have transparency in the money that is being contributed, so that when you see an ad on TV, it's not just an ad saying supported by Americans for Good Things. You actually have some sense of who's behind that. And so those are other pieces of legislation I would encourage folks to also talk about and support, because that would help. It may not get us all the way there, but it would also help create a lot of transparency and disclosure that I think would be very, very important.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Diane Harmon Hogan. My husband and I had to come to this meeting today because we thought we needed to thank you very much for going to Congress and representing the human rights that we stand for here in Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the hardest things, and one of the things we've heard most from folks since the beginning of this year, has been concerns about making sure that we respect everyone in our country, no matter where they came from, or their religion, or their ethnicity, or their sexual orientation, or their gender identity. And yet, this has been a challenging time because we've even heard from our president very hateful and divisive comments. And so I think it's incredibly important that we all stand up for our values and make sure that we hold the administration accountable too for standing up for those values as well. So thank you.
My question is that with all the divisiveness and everything going on basically in Congress and Senate, you think could be done to end the theatrics that's going on and get back to the business of governing?
I think your point of folks wanting to see governance work and for people to even do the basics like pass a budget and funding on a regular schedule, something we're struggling with right now, are critically important. How can a business plan if they don't know what a tax policy might look like tomorrow? Or how can a family plan if they don't know what our budgets is going to look like or whether programs they might depend on are going to be funded? And I'm on the budget committee right now. We right now are operating on what we call a continuing resolution, which is a partial budget because we never passed a full budget for this year. That's going to run out at the end of April. And what happens the next day is unclear, something we've got to work on this month. And that's, I'm a former business person. You would never run a business. You as families don't run 60 to 90 days at a time. You have to figure out where you're headed and what you want to do and where you're going to invest and what decisions you're going to make. And it's absolutely not a way to be running our federal government. So to get there, we need folks to come to the table and realize that we have to talk to each other. We have to look at ideas and understand how to solve problems. And we have to allow bipartisan solutions a chance to go on the floor. There has been this unwritten rule, some of you have heard about it, it's called the Hastert Rule, which is this idea that only bills should move if they're supported by the majority of the majority. I actually think our job is to do the right thing for the people we represent, and we should be making decisions based on that and working together to move it forward. And I think we need individual members of Congress to be willing to do that, and we need leadership in Congress to allow those pieces of legislation to move forward so we can vote. We have 3 buttons. When I put my voting card in on the floor of the House, I have 3 buttons. One is present, which we don't use very often, but one is yes and one is no. And so when a bill comes forward, we've got to vote yes or no, and it can't vote yes but or no but, it's yes or no. And many times when people are concerned about people having to take a stand, they just don't let the bill move at all, and then nothing happens, which is the point that you're making. So I certainly hope we can get to a place where we are making those decisions, because that's what you elected me and other members of Congress have been elected to do, is make those decisions for the constituents we serve. So, Patrick.
Thank you, Max. I've got a small medical clinic. We're primary care in Woodinville, and we've had that for 16 years. It's naturopathic and acupuncture. With Donald Trump's statement of an insurance should be bought across state line, which was a very whimsical statement, most people don't understand that Washington State has an All Categories Provider Act that requires the insurance companies to cover any licensed provider. In the event you can buy insurance across state lines, that essentially goes away, so anyone who has the desire to see their naturopath, their acupuncturist, their chiropractor, their massage therapist would lose insurance coverage for that. How can we ensure that Washington state laws are kept in place and provided for insurance companies that are trying to slip the toe in the water?
Good question, and I know we'll probably have a few questions about healthcare generally, but the race to the kind of the least common denominator, the argument about insurance across state lines would kind of take away our state's ability to set a standard and say that if another state sets a standard that may be lower, those insurance products should be available in our state, even though they wouldn't meet our state standards. And that's incredibly concerning, just for the reasons you brought up and for making sure that we have important basic coverage. The president said that he wanted there to be insurance for everybody. And if he was sincere about that statement, we probably wouldn't have seen the bill that we saw that thankfully didn't get on the floor for a vote, and it isn't moving forward. But it's still unclear what might come up next we absolutely should be looking at our healthcare system and see what's working and what's not working and continue to address challenges and problems that we see. I put forward legislation to help small businesses, help them provide healthcare to their employees. There are more things we can do, but absolutely the idea that we're going to give huge tax breaks out for the wealthy, hurt middle-class families, take away a block grant or even put per capita caps on Medicaid and take health care away from the most vulnerable people in our communities. That is absolutely does nothing to help make sure that everyone has affordable quality health care in our country, and we absolutely have to stop that from happening. So thank you though for the question.
Redmond, and my question is, how do you support the transgender community with protection?
So thank you for the question. One thing we could do is we could pass the Equality Act. It's an important piece of legislation to continue to, or frankly, to end ongoing discrimination of the LGBT community, discrimination in public accommodations, the ability to potentially fire someone for their job or kick them out of a home just because of who they are. And the Equality Act, I'm a proud co-sponsor, I'm a member of the Equality Caucus, we're working hard on that, but I think that would be one of the most important pieces of legislation at the federal level to help protect all of the LGBT community. I'm making my steps in today, going back and forth. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel, and I'm from Duval. As a young constituent who is greatly concerned about climate change, I was glad to hear you voice opposition to the current administration's proposed cuts to environmental protection and climate change research. As a member of the House Budget Committee, what steps will you specifically take to continue funding this important work?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and every time we have young people engaged involved, I just want to thank you for being engaged and involved and speaking out for your community. So there are a lot of ways we can address making sure that we continue to support having address climate change, make sure we support our environment, and clean water and clean air throughout our country. The budget is one way. There are many ways. I think the budget, though, what we've really seen is the president has put out what's called the skinny budget. It's a very high-level budget of where he would like to see cuts and changes. And clearly one of the places that he would make dramatic cuts to would be on issues of the environment, big cuts to EPA and to the Department of Agriculture. And even you've heard stories just this past week about not being able to use the words climate change. You know, I'm a scientist by training. I was a bio major in college. We passed 2 bills last week really questioning science. And so one, there aren't just alternative facts, there really are facts and science to support it. The decisions that we make. We shouldn't be disputing it. Even when we were talking about the healthcare bill, we had a bill we were talking about before we even had the numbers from the Congressional Budget Office to look at, and you heard people questioning the work of the Congressional Budget Office before their numbers came out, just as a way to because they knew the numbers would be bad, they wanted to kind of undermine the credibility of the organization so people wouldn't believe in that data. And we absolutely have to stand up for the science. People agree throughout our region, even people who, it's not a partisan issue anymore, although you may see that in Washington, D.C. There we have Republicans and Democrats who agree that climate change is an issue, it's a threat to our planet, and that we should take every action we can to make sure we address it. And I'm really heartbroken about what's happened with respect to the Paris Agreement and the head of the EPA, the decisions the administration has made, and even bills that we have passed even in the last couple of weeks to undo efforts to make sure we support and address issues of climate. So thank you for speaking up. I will continue to speak up and fight, but this is definitely a challenging issue for us in Washington, D.C. right now. Thank you.
I'm Eunice from Kirkland. And speaking of bipartisan issues and support, last year in the Congress, there was an impressive show of bipartisan support that allocated an impressive amount of money to National Institutes of Health, funded the cancer moonshot, et cetera. And I think for those of us in the cancer community and supportive of medical research, we want to say thank you for being a champion. That's the first thing. Secondly, we're very disheartened by the President's proposed budget, which would take away nearly 20% from the National Institutes of Health. And then furthermore, this week, asked for an immediate budget cut of, I believe it was $1.2 million to NIH. So, knowing that last year there was such significant bipartisan support for that funding, what's the chance that that will reemerge despite the President's proposal?
Thank you for not only the question, but for all the work you're doing. As you were asking that question, I was looking at my dear friend, Dana, right there, who is a cancer survivor and continues to fight every day. And that's why this is so important. This is about making sure we're making investments to come up with future cures and therapies and treatments. And I started my career doing medical research. That was the first thing I did, immunology research and cancer research. And the investments we make in areas like the NIH give us an incredible return. And that's why I led a letter to increase funding for the NIH, because it's been decreasing, to get it back up. And as you said, we did increase it at the end of the last Congress finally to get it back up on that upward trend so we get back to where we used to be in funding. And the administration has proposed cutting that to help do things like build a wall. And those cuts would come out because, as I was talking about earlier, because we're only kind of have a plan through the end of this month. Part of the proposal is to take some of the funding we just talked about putting in place away for the rest of this fiscal year, so the end of this month through the end of September, and also to take funds away in the next fiscal year in the FY18 budget. And I am absolutely against that. But I'd say we're probably never going to vote on the president's budget. The congressional Republicans will come up with a budget, and that budget is the one that will be considered and might come up in the budget committee that I'm on. And we will see what they propose. I absolutely hope with the letter that I led to increase NIH funding, I did in a bipartisan fashion with David McKinley from West Virginia. There is bipartisan support for that, so I'm going to continue to work with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, because I think there are many there who won't want to see the president's proposal in this particular case in the budget that they propose. And we'll probably see that budget, their budget, at the end of April. And I'm hopeful that there will be a different position with respect to funding for NIH and many other areas, but NIH in particular. So thank you. There's a go Huskies.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Congresswoman. My name is Sue. I'm here from Redmond, and I am retired, but I'm not yet 66. But I'm feeling very anxious about Social Security with all the fake news that goes on back and forth. I understand, I think adequately well that the trust fund is actually adequately funded for several more years to come. But can you give me and this audience some reassurances about both the old age fund as well as the disability fund, and what is Congress doing to better fund it in the future so we don't have to worry about it being depleted?
Social Security is something that people have been paying in all their lives, and we talk about it as entitlement. It is an earned benefit. Yeah. really want to continue to strengthen Social Security, we should scrap the cap, something that many of you have heard before. Make sure that we aren't declining in the money that is going into Social Security. And I'm a co-sponsor of legislation that would make sure that we not only scrap the cap, but also use something called CPIE, which is the index. We look at how benefits are provided and how Social Security, the calculation that's made in terms of what Social Security benefits people get every year. If we use an index based on the true cost of seniors versus others in our country, things like prescription drugs, et cetera, have a big impact on cost of living. That would make sure that we were keeping those benefits in line with the actual true cost changes that seniors are seeing. That's a piece of legislation that I'm on, and we need to, and on Ways and Means, the committee that I'm on now too, these are issues that we will hopefully be able to take up and work on. But there are some pretty straightforward things we can do to continue to make sure that Social Security is strong even further out into the future, and also make sure that benefits are keeping up with what people need today. That there are many folks. I was able to do a roundtable with in Kirkland with some folks in our region. In fact, a woman named Grace, 87 years old, from Redmond. She's a teacher all of her life, and so she has her pension plus Social Security. And she talks about how critically important Social Security is to her ability to get by every day. And so that's why it's important that we not look at this as something that's going to be cut to pay for something else, but make sure we keep it strong into the future, so that not only folks like folks my age, but folks like my daughter's age, who's here over in the corner hiding out, also are going to have Social Security available for them when they're older. So thank you for the question. Sorry, Becca, I had to call you out eventually. So
I'm Peter from Woodinville. And this concerns the Supreme Court Justice. And the Democrats are planning on filibustering. And what are you going to get out of that? And is this payback for the screw up last year? Payback doesn't work. So
no, thank you. As a member of the House of Representatives, I don't actually vote on the Supreme Court nominees. It's all done by the Senate. And I look kind of like Senator Cantwell. Sometimes people think I am Senator Cantwell. But in fact, the other day someone said, "Thank you for coming to our event. You did a great job serving potato salad." And it wasn't me. So I congratulated Senator Cantwell on her great potato salad delivery. But I do think that it was awful that Merrick Garland's nomination was held up for so long for political reasons. It's not surprising that now that Republicans have a nominee and have a majority in the Senate, that they want to push something through soon and have been really challenging Democrats for wanting to have more time and also wanting to have a voice in this process. So the Democrats will filibuster. You've heard, I think even Lindsey Graham had a town hall, Senator Graham had a town hall this morning where he said he's Republican. He said he was going to vote to change the rules to end the filibuster. So that's a likely outcome that may happen so that Republicans can move Judge Gorsuch's nomination forward. So we will see what happens. I know both of our senators have said they're going to vote no. If Republicans vote to change the rules, though, then they may override that filibuster, and that's what we will see here in the near future.
Hi. I have two comments and one question, short. The comments are, thank you very much for voting to not, well, you didn't vote, but thank you very much.
He voted in committee, so.
Yeah, voting in committee against the Republican Health Care Act. But a majority of Americans, usually about 58 to 60%, prefer a single-payer healthcare solution. The question is, will you sign on as a co-sponsor of H.R. 676, the Improved and Expanded Medicare for All Act?
So I believe strongly that we should have a public option on the exchange. And the reason I think this is important is I want to make sure everyone has access and actually has affordable quality healthcare in our country. And to make the transition, to get to the point, and really what you're talking about is making sure people have a public option available to them. How can you argue if you have a public option available and more people use it, that that's not something that people want to see, and that doesn't end up being where we head with our healthcare system. I do think that if our goal is to make sure that everyone has affordable health care, or that people have a public option if they want it, whether it's Medicare on the exchange, et cetera, that people can use. I've supported that both before I was in office and I support it now. I know there's other legislation to go to single payer right away. I think one of the best ways to actually look at getting to a place where people have that option is to put on the exchange and let people decide. And so that's going to be important. We need to continue to work hard on healthcare, as I said, to see what's working and not working with the world that we have today, to keep making it work, because that's going to get us to that right goal in the end. And maybe that right goal is exactly what you're talking about, but I want to make sure we figure out a way where we get something on the table where people can actually make those choices themselves and move us in the direction that American people want to move to. But thank you, and thank you for your support on that issue. That's so important. I'm always looking at my folks for the next person to go to, so just look at those when you raise your hand. If you look at others, because Patrick's going to help folks out here too. Yeah, Ben, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Isaac, and I live in Bobble, and this is kind of a big one, but there have been a lot of questions today about how best to work across party lines and how to compromise. Well, what about those times when we can't? The sentiment behind sanctuary cities, which I think is a good idea. And most recently, just a few days ago, I'd like to hear your reaction to the joint statement of all the West Coast governors and about half a dozen mayors of major cities, which declared a united front in support of clean power development. So, thoughts?
Two things. When I say I am honored to represent the better Washington, we've done a lot of great things. Even recently, there was a lot of talk about this Washington and the other Washington through all the work that's happened on immigration and executive orders, and the work that we've done on clean energy as well. So I don't know if you asked about a statement. I think in the end, we absolutely should be making sure we are focused on economy and moving to clean, green, renewable energy future, and that's an economic opportunity as well as an opportunity for us to do the best thing in the future for our environment and for the health and welfare of our children and our children's children. So that's critical, and as we talked about a little while ago, we were unable to, we've been trying to get attention on some of these issues, and we need more folks who are willing to prioritize climate and move legislation forward. And the administration is taking us backwards right now, and that's a huge challenge that we face. But I'm going to keep fighting, and I think there are others too who will keep fighting. But it has been, even though it is not a partisan issue so much in our communities, it is a partisan issue much more in Washington, D.C. And on immigration reform, I helped lead a comprehensive immigration reform bill in my first term in Congress. It was a bipartisan bill. I think we would have, was it perfect? No, but it would have made a huge difference. And I think it would have passed if we had just been allowed to vote. it was never allowed to come to the floor. A somewhat similar bill passed in the Senate, that one in the House never moved forward. So when you hear me say that if we really want to make a difference, we have leadership has to let bipartisan legislation move, and if people don't like it, they can vote no. But it's terrible when we have folks who say, well, I support immigration reform, but not this bill, not that bill, not this bill. It's kind of a way to try to, let's put the bill on the floor and let people vote. If they don't like it, they can vote no, but give people the opportunity to vote yes, or have others who have not been certain, have them take a stand. And I think we might be able to see some of that legislation move that has been stuck. But immigration has gotten more challenging, not less challenging. And I was at the airport at SeaTac right after the executive order went out, and we had people who had visas and who were being detained at the airport. We absolutely all, and there were many people who came out to protest and make sure their voices heard. That made a huge difference. Our Attorney General made a huge difference. A lot of and our county and our cities who are standing up and saying that we're going to, support people who are here in our communities. I think there's going to be fights, and we've heard the president or the attorney general talk about taking away grants on sanctuary cities, et cetera. There are going to continue to be battles, and I think we need to speak out and be strong, because I think it's made a difference and will continue to make a difference. Thank you.
And I was just wondering, we've had a lot about, you may have heard about the young lady at Golden Gardens Park who got raped by the illegal guy. Did you hear about that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
You mean in California?
No, okay.
Oh, that.
Here, in Golden Gardens down in Valley. Anyway, she was jogging and she got raped by a guy who was here illegally. So, I don't know whether they found out if he was actually a felon already, but if there's a person who is a felon or is going to be convicted of felony, do you support deportation of that person? And what is your plan does your plan include securing the national border so we don't have just a massive amount of people coming in? I mean, I believe we should have refugees coming in, or people that are here legally, but not folks that are coming here that don't like us or want to do harm to people.
So we absolutely should focus our efforts on making sure that anyone who is a threat to our communities, that should be where our immigration efforts are focused on. People who have committed crimes and are a threat to our community, and those should be our highest priorities. And I think that's something that even was, President Obama talked about, et cetera. So absolutely, there should be an effort there. And we should make sure that our borders, that we have secure borders, and that people are passing through, that they are able to go talk to, the Border Patrol is able to do their job. In the comprehensive immigration reform bill that I was talking about earlier, that I helped propose, we made sure that we were looking at providing resources for the border, resources for things like technology and other areas. You look at our border, I represent the Western Canadian border. We have people who go across every day. And we have a park that we share with Canada where people are in every day. And so we want to make sure that folks are able to get through back and forth. I represent Point Roberts. I have to drive through Canada to get to part of my district. And so we realize the border is a commercial border. It's a place where families and others are getting across. And yes, we need to make sure that we have security at our borders too. So, but I also believe strongly that we have many people in our country who are here, who are members of our community. We have honor students who came here when they were children, who were, some of them who are covered under the President's Deferred Action. There's a young man who, Andres, up in Mount Vernon, a Running Start student, great young man who was about to be deported, and my office was able to work with him to make sure that he was not deported, and he is still here. But his future is still unknown. His future is unknown. And so all I'm saying is there work that we need to do to fix a broken immigration system? Absolutely. And we need to work together to make that happen. But by the administration kind of demonizing people who are here, kind of collectively putting everyone in categories, that's not the way to do it. And so I do hope that both to do all of the goals that we want to do, to make sure that we are protecting and keeping people in our country safe, that we have an immigration system that makes sense and treats everyone with respect and dignity. That's what we should be working on. I'm very supportive of comprehensive immigration reform. I wish we were able to get more folks in Congress on the other side of the aisle to help work on the bill that I helped put forward. If they don't like it, come up with other ideas. We had a border section in that bill that was a bipartisan piece of legislation. So there's work that we can do if people come to the table and actually work on it. And that's what I hope that we'll do. But thank you for the question.
Congresswoman DelBene, my name is Paul Hess, and I live in the city of Kenmore. I have two quick questions. You're on the Budget Committee and the Ways and Means Committee. Could you tell us what 3 federal agencies that you would eliminate? And number 2, how are you going to start on reducing the $20 trillion federal debt?
I don't think you solve problems by just saying, I'm going to get rid of an agency. I think you say, what problems are we trying to solve? What services do we need to provide our communities? And how do we best do that? And I am very frustrated with for example, the president's budget that just kind of cuts without really any sense of the impact on programs, the impact on communities, has no plan in terms of what is trying to be achieved except to increase a defense budget by more than the Department of Defense would even ask for, and to have funds to build a wall. So that means we need to sit down and talk about where our dollars need to go. I think we need to be fiscally responsible. The example we had in a healthcare bill that would have cut taxes, impacted the most vulnerable, and I think ended up creating huge problems in our communities. That's not the way that we solve our challenges fiscally. We sit down and we talk and we see what's working, what's not working, what we can do, take a long-term view, because sometimes spending a little money today actually saves us a lot of money in the future. Infrastructure is a great area where if we invest, we actually save money in the future. Education is a place where we invest, we get much better outcomes. I'm a big believer in this idea of return on investment. When we put dollars in place, taxpayer money in place, what do we get in return for that? And sometimes that's going to be fiscal return, sometimes it's going to be human return, right? That people have better health care, better lives, or access to jobs. And I worry that the budget right now is viewed as just about spending, and if you just cut, then you have saved money. And I actually think the argument that just cutting, sequestration or other ways of just cutting is a way of saving, I actually think it's costing us more in the future and is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. I'd like us to see what's working, what's not working. Sequestration kind of does these across-the-board cuts. Let's cut the things that aren't working. Sequestration probably doesn't cut them enough. And let's make sure we're investing in the things that give us a great return. In many cases, we're not investing enough in those areas. And then also as a member of the Ways and Means Committee and someone who ran our Department of Revenue, and we have a tax policy also that's broken. We are making investments through our tax policy. I'd say that's kind of part of our budgeting process too. We make investments through tax policy. We're investing in things that don't give us a great return anymore, and we're not investing in things that would. So as we look at tax reform, we should absolutely be looking at making sure we have a tax system that is more fair and is giving a better return to the American people, and especially to middle-class families.
DelBene, my name is Mark Stewart. I want to thank you on behalf of the students and their parents, like Washington School District, for defending their health care in the last legislative attempt to take away. I also have a question, though. In the, if you recall back in the Clinton administration, when they had their health system reform proposals, they had the idea of community pools in which small businesses or individuals join those pools, and it would help stabilize the price swings on premiums. Have you thought about that for the future legislation to improve the ACA?
Well, I think we should be looking at, we should be having the discussion about what we can do to, like I said, we should have a goal. Everyone should have affordable quality health care in our country. So if we can agree on that goal, which I would hope we could, but then let's see what's working and not working. Let's go through. There are things that Republicans agree are working well, like kids being able to stay on their parents' plans till they're 26, or at least I thought we agreed on pre-existing conditions, but that came up a little bit in this last bill. Let's agree on those things that are working, and then let's be talking more about what we can do to address it. Some of those ideas, just like you said, or you were suggesting, are things we absolutely should be talking about. I don't think we're ever going to solve, and this would be true of immigration reform or health care or tax reform. I don't think one bill, and then you say, I'm done, we did it, is the way we solve our big challenges. In fact, I'd argue it's probably made it worse that we do one bill and we leave it on the shelf and then we wait for 30 years and all of a sudden we're surprised that our problem has become really complicated and hard and ugly because it's out of date, it's not working more, and then we have to do something really big to change it. What if we saw what was working, what wasn't working, and kept making adjustments along the way? We have policy that was up to date. If something wasn't working, we'd be able to learn that, hopefully, get data and facts and see what's working and not working. We learn from that and adjust. We might be willing to try some things out so we can learn more about what might try pilots or other things. And that's what I'd love to see us do on all of these issues, because I think even in places where we're in a good place today, the way the world works changes, and we need to make sure we're adjusting along the way. So thank you for the question.
Hi, my name is Wajid Sen. I'm from Redmond. We saw how the healthcare went down. Now they are making a tax reform bill. Where do you stand on that tax reform bill, and shouldn't something might come good out of it? Why Republicans and Democrats are only voting along the party lines? At least on the tax reform bill, I think they should not be voting only on the party line.
Thank you for the question. First, let me highlight kind of what happened in the healthcare bill, because this will inform my answer when we talk about tax reform. We had a bill come out on a Monday night. We were supposed to mark it up in committee on Wednesday morning. We had no data from the Congressional Budget Office scoring it, giving us the information on the impact that it would have. We didn't get to hear from our constituents or stakeholders about how that particular bill would impact their lives. And so we got a bill. We went into our markup, no hearings, no chance to get feedback. We went in at 10 o'clock in the morning. The bill came out of committee at 4:30 the next morning, because people wanted to get it through. And then the next week it came to the budget committee. And that first bill, it went by party lines. It went by party lines absolutely, because I think every Democrat, including me, said, one, based on all we know, it's a terrible bill. 2, we don't have the data, we haven't talked to people. This is no way to address an issue as big or as important. So now we come to tax reform. We have something called a blueprint that is out there. It is Chairman Brady is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. He has proposed a blueprint with Speaker Ryan. It is very general, so we don't have a lot of detail behind it. Things that you've heard about, like a border adjustment tax, other proposals. The specificity isn't there. There are things in there that are concerning to me. There are a lot of things that are concerning, but I don't have enough specifics to know what they're trying to accomplish. But I do worry about making sure we have a tax system that is fair for families. We have a tax system that hasn't been fair for small businesses and families. And when we have corporate tax reform in there as well. And to really address these issues, we need to see the specifics on what they're proposing. We don't have that yet. So I'm worried that it would go down the same path where a bill, all of a sudden the specifics come out in a bill, and we don't have hearings, and we don't have a chance to hear from folks, different families in terms of how it would impact them, how it would impact farmers or small businesses or different sectors of our economy, and that the bill would be dropped and we would just move it through committee right away. That's one. It's not going to be bipartisan in that way because we were never asked for input on the bill before it got there, and I worry that that's where we might head in tax reform. I hope that that's not true. I hope that we are able to have a dialogue and hearings and question and hear from people, that we can amend things. I put up amendments on the healthcare bill. They were all voted down. So if that's the process for tax reform, then you probably will see something that looks a lot more partisan, but that's because there was no desire to work with others or allow that information to be shared or ideas to be shared. So, so that's my concern, but I can't, this is an important issue, and I think people on both sides of the aisle agree that we need tax reform, but exactly what that means and how you do that is critically important, and we need the specifics, and we need to be able to talk about the specifics first. Thanks. Yeah, for talk.
My name is Dominic, and I wonder, are there any bills that have been drafted to continue to fund renewable technology?
Up in front of everybody here and sharing your ideas, and if you have good ideas for bills too, let me know. I am a co-chair of I set up a caucus, a group of members of Congress called the Internet of Things Caucus, and I co-chair in terms of bipartisanship. I co-chair that with Daryl Issa from California, and we set it up to really educate lawmakers about technology, because I get to be one of the geeks in Congress, but we don't have a lot of folks who have a lot of knowledge about technology, where it is today, where it's headed. But one of the interesting things when you talk about the Internet of Things is this idea that we have all these sensors and new technologies that can give us information to help us address all sorts of issues, healthcare, agriculture, and as well as traffic and transportation. We have great opportunities. Some are just ideas that are being tested out. Some are a little further along. So what we've tried to do is bring folks together and discuss that. And so one area, for example, there's been some legislation, is work on smart cities, which is to help cities and communities use technologies to run their buildings so they're more energy efficient, to help traffic flow and maybe time lights when they're, and help move traffic as opposed to just leave it static where it is, which I know probably those are things that drive everybody crazy. You're the only one at the light and it's still at red. And so we have those opportunities. We have legislation to help create pilot projects and experiments around the country so we can fund some so we can learn what's working, what's not working, and so take some of those good ideas and share them so more of our communities can learn from each other. We know technology hasn't been used in our government very well in the past. We spent a lot of money, but not necessarily gotten results. And one way we can get better results is by giving folks a chance in one community to experiment with something, see what they learn, share it with others, so that when things are deployed more broadly, we get good results. But there are many great opportunities out there. And so we need to work at all of those and see where there are opportunities and where there are challenges and learn from that. But they're going to be, as you grow up, you're going to see a lot of incredible things happen because there are so many things teed up to have big breakthroughs. There were in my lifetime, but I know there's even more coming up for you. So thanks.
One of the best things the Republicans did for Obamacare was to fail to reach across the aisle and to start with a bad bill and then make it worse. I'm worried as we move into the other big things coming up now that they're going to take a different approach and in pretending to reach across the aisle, offer us the most minor concessions while still essentially trying to push through very bad bills, very bad budgets. What can we do to help you to resist that?
So one example is the healthcare bill that we had just been debating. When it finally came to the floor of the House of Representatives, there was not a single Democratic amendment that was offered because it was beyond just making a tweak here and there, to your point. It was a fundamentally flawed bill. And I want to work with folks to solve problems, and I'm willing to have those conversations if folks are willing to come forward and try to come up with solutions to solve problems. But if it's just to make a small change to something that's terrible, then in the end, that's not really helping to solve the problem. Now, we do truly, if we are legislating and governing, as the gentleman was talking about earlier, we many times have bills that have good things in them and not good things in them, and it can be challenging to know, as I said before, you only get to vote yes or no to lay that out. But then the healthcare bill, this was not some good things, bad things. It was just, as I said, really an inhumane, fundamentally flawed bill. So that wasn't about coming together and fixing it. But we have the opportunity to start off and try to come together and fix things. And I would hope that there would be more of an effort to try to get there. Folks talk about infrastructure as a place where maybe people can come together, and maybe that's true, and if we're able to do that, we passed an infrastructure bill last Congress, the FAST Act, where people did come together. We passed the farm bill, as I talked about before, where we had bipartisanship. But that's because it started that way. It wasn't because at the very end someone said, here's the bill, and you can just tweak it on the edges. We had that bipartisan conversation at the beginning and helped formulate the bill. And I think that's what needs to happen if we're really going to come up with solutions that work all across our country. Because we all represent our regions, whatever party we are, we represent our regions. Sometimes things are regional, sometimes they're more partisan, but the only way we're going to come up with something that works for the majority of people is we sit down, have those hearings, and hear from different experts and do the work ahead of time, which did not happen with this healthcare bill. And thank you to our signers for being here too today.
Hello, Representative DelBene, and thank you for all your work. My name is Anila, and I'm with the Muslim Association of Puget Sound in Redmond. As you know, Representative DelBene, our mosque sign was vandalized twice in less than a month, and last night we had protesters show up to our mosque, protesting our mosque, and we've seen mosques and other places of worship across our nation get attacked, and all kinds of fear and hatred and violence being spread around. And we've had the highest level of hate crimes against Muslims in our country, and bullying and harassment of kids, and this has affected other communities as well. So my question is, especially when we're seeing this rhetoric at the national level being perpetrated and perpetuated, besides your bill to prevent religious registries, which we support, and you showing up at the airport, which of course we appreciate, what more could you do as an elected leader to help teach our fellow Americans about the reality as opposed to the misinformation being spread about Muslims in our country? And what can all of us do as Muslims, Christians, Jews, other, to stand together on our shared American values?
Well, I think we saw some of that just right here. Because, first of all, thank you, Anila, for all you've done. She came out to Washington, D.C. She was there for the President's address to the Congress to speak out and to support not only the Muslim community, but speak out against hatred and support all members of our community. So thank you for the work that you do. This is one where it's incumbent on everyone in this room and everyone throughout our community to stand up, because when we see whether the hatred and divisiveness, when it happens, whether it's a tweet or the sign being vandalized, or people who have been attacked in our country, even in Kansas City, and members of the Indian community who were here visiting, even here in our region, our Sikh community, we have people, anti-Semitism against our Jewish community. It's happening right here in our region, and those are not our values. No. And we need to remind everyone. And that means speaking up and being loud. It's not, that was bad, but it's being active, it's being loud and vocal, it's coming to here today, but it's all of the work that I know has happened in terms of people turning out at events to make sure that they want everyone to see that they're willing to stand with our entire community, no matter their background, their religion. They are members of our community, and we should be standing up for each other. And I know that the Muslim community has stood up for others, and others in our community have stood up for the Muslim community, but we have to call it out. And if there's one thing that has been most frustrating to me in this Congress has been that colleagues of mine who I know disagree with what's happening haven't always stood up and been loud about whether it's a tweet from the president, executive actions, standing up for all members of the community and saying, those aren't our values, that's not our country, and we need everyone, this should not be a partisan issue. This is an American issue, and we all should stand up for that. So thank you for that.
Hi, my name is Jody Lineman, and I'm from Redmond, Washington, and this question concerns the office of the presidency. I am outraged and fearful of the number of norms of office and rules and laws that are being blatantly broken. Even if President Trump were a Democrat, which I am, I would still be outraged. My fear is the office is changing, and this is not an accusation against any one party. I'm wondering, does not Congress understand that if this continues, the office could permanently change and put our democracy at risk? And I'm wondering what you hear from other members of Congress and your discussions are how you can act more as a check on the executive branch's power.
I share your concerns. We in Congress are an independent branch of government, and we have a constitutional obligation to provide oversight of the executive branch, and we should be. And that means having independent investigations on what we've seen with respect to as I said earlier, I'm disappointed that more of my colleagues on the other side aren't also standing there. We have some, but if there is nothing to hide, then no one should have anything to fear about making sure that they release their tax return. Or have an independent investigation so that we and the American people all know the facts of what's really happened and whether there is something that we should be concerned about, and that absolutely is what should be happening. And I'm very frustrated, as I know everyone here is, with what's happening in the House Intelligence Committee with the chairman there. That's absolutely goes against making sure we have an independent investigation, and that's going to be something we'll continue to talk about. I hope that there is an effort to make sure that we have an independent commission so that it is not led by a partisan or someone who is working on behalf of the administration when we're trying to find out information about what has happened on a campaign or with the administration. There clearly are, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, has said, you know, there are things good to get. The information we found out is circumstantial or things don't connect, but there are a lot of things out there and it raises a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of effort to avoid digging in and finding out what happened, which makes you want to dig in and find out what happened even more. So we need to do that. I support doing that, and I hope that more of my Republican colleagues will stand up and call for that too.
Redmond. I work at Naval Station Everett as a utility energy manager. I'd like to hear you talk a little more about ending the continuing resolution authority, as well as equally important, ending the hiring freeze. And invite you to Naval Station Everett to see the 12 Energy Star buildings that we have and the base-wide building automation system, and how we've been able to reduce energy consumption by 40% using Second Half Mavis's initiatives for energy conservation.
Thank you. And Ben is former Navy, so he's sharing the Navy there. And I have been to Naval Station Everett and seen all the buildings and what's happening there too. So, but thank you for that. We can't govern this way. Continuing resolution only goes for a few months at a time, and then we see what we have coming up now, a potential, when I first started in Congress, we had a shutdown because folks couldn't agree on a budget going forward, and that had dramatic impacts on people right here in our communities in ways that people didn't even think of. And I would hope that folks have learned from that how critically important it is that we plan, and we're asking folks to plan and put something in place for a year. And so the fact that we're doing continuing resolutions for a few months at a time is, to the gentleman's earlier point, the most expensive and least efficient way to budget there is, and that's still what we're doing. So we're going to end up at the end of this month having to decide how we fund the government for the rest of this fiscal year. And today's April 1st, so it's April, and we are in session next week. And then we're not in session for 2 weeks, and then we're back. So I think there's less than 10 legislative days left before we hit the end of that continuing resolution. And we still don't know what the plan is for the rest of this fiscal year, let alone FY18, which is what we're supposed to be working on right now. So I say all that to say you're absolutely right. We should not be doing it this way. We shouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. We should put forward a budget, have people have input, et cetera. And if Republicans can't pass a piece of legislation on their own because they have fractures in their party, they should be working with others so the majority of Congress can get together and pass legislation. The federal workforce has been taking a beating for a long time, and we've seen the kind of this blanket freeze on hiring, and we've had to call out even exemptions to make sure, for example, the VA can hire doctors, because when you do a blanket freeze, it stops everything, and it stopped critical hiring that everyone would agree is important, and we can't just keep going through and say, hey, quick, you got to be able to lift this part of the freeze or that part of the freeze. It's not a way to govern or to run anything. If there are changes that need to be made, we need to talk to folks and see what changes are made. We shouldn't be doing these blanket across the board freezes like we are, because it's having such an impact in areas where I don't think people want it to have an impact, but when you do something that haphazard, that's what happens. I also thank you for the work you do. We don't thank our federal employees enough, our state employees, all of the folks who work for us. The federal employees have been hit pretty hard because there's always an attempt to kind of balance our budget on the back of federal employees too, and that also is not a way to solve it, and has not always been respectful for people who are doing a great job. So
DelBene. My name is Rebecca. I'm from Redmond. I was excited.
My daughter's name is Rebecca, so that's a great name.
I was excited to see your business background and your role on the Budget and Ways and Means Committee, and I think you have a lot to bring to the table there. I am concerned about the national debt, like many others here. And I know your term is only 2 years, but how do you define success and what you can impact over the next 2 years on the national debt? And what plan do you have to ensure that you make that success happen?
I really can't emphasize enough how if we're going to be fiscally responsible, we have to put a budget in place and go through the normal appropriations process. The fact that we're not doing that, and I'll say it again, is the most expensive and least efficient way to budget and does nothing. So when folks talk about fiscal responsibility, it makes me pretty angry that they aren't even willing to do the basics of make sure we negotiate and put a budget in place and talk about appropriations. That's step one. Step two is understanding where we collectively, what we need to invest in and what we shouldn't be invested in. And things change. There are things we've invested in the past that that might be in a place where they're self-sustaining and we don't need to invest anymore. We should work on new areas. Energy is a good example. We don't need the investments in fossil fuels. We need the investments in clean, renewable energy. They'll need those dollars. So when I talk about making sure we have a smart budget, let's talk about that, and let's talk again about the return we get and whether or not we are seeing that return. Because if we get a great return and we help people to have a great education, so they have better outcomes. Something near and dear to my heart that some of my colleagues have tried to cut nutrition programs. I'm pretty sure that a child and a family do a lot better if they're able to have healthy, nutritious food every day than if we cut their food supply because we think those resources, $30 a week, are too generous. But we have folks who want to save money by cutting nutrition programs as opposed to making sure that we cut programs that like I said, might be supporting an industry that's hugely profitable and doesn't need our support anymore. Those are the trade-offs that we need to be making, and we're not having those conversations. We're putting together these kind of continuing resolutions, quick, just kind of kick the can down the road is what you hear it described as all the time, as opposed to making the real decisions we need to make, and realize too that we have to make trade-offs and that we need to make sure our resources go in the places that have the best impact for our communities and that we're not wasteful of those resources. and shutdowns and continuing resolutions are wasteful. And I would argue walls on our southern border are also wasteful. If we could do that, if we could govern in that way, I think we'd be able to start moving down that path where we're addressing issues of deficit and debt long-term. But unfortunately, that isn't where we've been at right now, and that's part of the struggle that we have. And that's one of the things that I will be fighting for as we have these budget conversations this month, and frankly going forward, because we have to get on that path. And that will lead to better investments, better return on our investments, and frankly, that will, I think, put us in a much more positive direction overall from a fiscal standpoint in the federal government. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Congress. I'd like to thank you for the strong leadership you give this district. I'm Linda from Redmond. I'd like to say that. I'd like to follow up with what the gentleman earlier said about HJR 48. We passed that initiative with a supermajority in the state. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal has already signed HJR 48, as has Congressman Gary Kilmer. You said you would have your group look into it. When might we know when you'd be ready to sign HJR 48?
I will definitely have my team look into it, they will, and I will get back to you soon. We just need to make sure our team has a chance to look through legislation, and So if we have, I guess you've given me a chance to do one plug here. We have a e-newsletter that we send out, but also, so that's one thing, we can help contact people more. We have contact information for you, so let us know, and then I'll make sure that we get back to you with what we end up doing on that, to both of you or anybody else who might be interested in knowing. Thank you.
Congresswoman.
Jones, I was going, you do not sound like the voice of I think I even know that voice, and it does not sound like yours. So.
We have time actually for one more question, and I know you want to say goodbye to everyone, but before that one more question, could we just introduce State Representative Donna Slaughter, who snuck in and we didn't get a chance to
And sitting next to my daughter, right there.
Wrap it up, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm Pam Fabaka. If, when we all protest, write letters, march, say we disagree with the wall or whatever it is, does it make a difference?
Absolutely.
I'm supposed to add, I bet it does to you, but does it for, you know, the people that are entrenched in their positions?
And I say absolutely because I think that the strong voices that people have throughout our country is a reason that healthcare bill never made it to the floor. Sometimes it doesn't feel satisfying because it's not like you do this and then something happens the next day, but it absolutely has an impact. And that's why I always say, you know, having strong voices is important. The number of letters and emails and calls to our office has more than doubled since January. So my first 4 years are a lot less. And they just stay there and maybe even on a slightly upward slope in terms of communication. And that's good because then if someone asks me, are you hearing? I can say, absolutely, record numbers. I've never had as many responses on X or Y. And it shows that it's not just kind of folks responding. There's a demonstrable difference in terms of people's engagement. And it makes a difference not just for the legislators who might agree with you on an issue, but the folks who disagree with you also hear that too. And their offices know if they're hearing, you know, 20 plus to 1 of people who say the healthcare bill is bad. A lot of offices, again, people who were potentially supportive of the bill had heard very strong voices against it too. And so I do think it makes a big difference. And I encourage folks to stay engaged and involved and to have strong voices because I think it has an impact. And I think it helps other community members to see that they're not necessarily alone, that there are others there, and also maybe helps folks have courage who haven't always been willing to engage in the public sector or talk to their member of Congress or their senator or their state representatives or their mayor, et cetera, to start doing that. I think there's a lot of folks who more recently have gotten engaged who may not have thought about doing that before, and that absolutely makes a big difference. So, which is a great way to kind of end this, because I think that's really what this is about. There may be follow-up questions on some things, and I apologize sometimes because I can't go into huge depth on every issue right here, but if you have a question, there are some cards here. You can also email our office, etc., or call, or you know, I'm back and forth a lot. Sometimes I see some of you when you're in DC, and so it's always nice to see folks from home back in the other Washington, but stay engaged and involved. That's really helpful for me to hear your voices. We have 3 more town halls coming up, and we can get you the dates. We have one in Kirkland, one in Snohomish, and one in Mount Vernon still coming up this month. So if you have neighbors or others or folks who wanted to come and couldn't come to this one, those are coming up in another week or 2. From like the 11th through the 21st. I can't remember all the actual dates, but we send that out in email too, and have been posting on Facebook, so we will have some other forums coming up here soon. But thank you. I don't know what the exact score is, so don't tell me, so I'll try to look. But thank you for being great members of your community and being engaged and involved, and for sharing your feedback with me. I appreciate it.